What's up, everybody? Welcome to the How to Lead podcast, a conversation designed to help you develop yourself and those around you. My name's Adam, joined by Clay. Clay, we are going to talk about today how to become an enlightened control freak, which I just like. I just kind of chuckle when I say that. What comes to your mind when you hear the term or the phrase control freak? What do you immediately think of?
Well, a face comes to my mind because I worked for a boss that was a control freak.
Okay.
And I struggle with the concept because that is not my nature to be a control freak. I'm a little more laid back, a little more chill, but it kind of bothers me about myself because I do feel like the men and women in this world that are really good at focusing on something, fine-tuning it, becoming obsessed with it, are the ones that do something great in life. And so I do think there's something healthy about it, but certainly the term has got a negative connotation.
It does, yes. Describe that boss. Yeah, what was that like?
Not a real enjoyable experience. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, our daughter plays on a soccer team. They're playing. They made the state championship game, and I would say the coach of the team is a control freak. And sometimes that bothers my wife and I, but at the same time, you got to hand it to the guy. The proof is in the pudding. I mean, he has taken this team, which was they were decent throughout the year, and they've won their first 4 playoff games, and in a couple of nights they'll play for the state championship.
Come on.
So there is something really powerful about learning how to focus really, really well.
Yeah. I've never heard the term used positively. It's like a disparaging comment, like, oh, that person's a control freak. A lot of times if we think about it at work or professional settings, it's, oh, I work for a control freak. I mean, sometimes people will say I am a control freak. You'll hear that a little bit, but I mean, I think of probably, if you think about it in the professional setting, the control freak is somebody who micromanages, they hoard tasks, they obsess over the tiniest details, and they generally drive everybody crazy in the process.
Yes, because if you've ever worked for a boss that phrase you just said, obsessed over the tiniest of details, that is exactly what the boss that I had did. And it does make you think, does this really matter? You spend an inordinate amount of energy focusing on something that you feel like the juice is not going to be worth the squeeze, right?
Right.
That's what kind of drives you crazy about working for one, for sure. But definitely, you said it at the end of that statement, that it drives everyone crazy. It certainly drove me crazy working for one.
Yeah. Well, I've been, for a lot of reasons, some of this is I've been writing my second book, and this has been something that I've been thinking about a lot, is this idea of really it can be traced, the idea can be traced all the way back to Epictetus and Stoic philosophy, like 125, a long, long time ago, this idea of being able to put everything you face in life into one of 2 categories. What do you control? What do you not control? And so the idea of what do we control has been really guiding great thinkers for thousands of years. You and I are not the first one to talk about this, nor was your boss the first one to think about it, nor is your daughter's coach, the first one to think about this. And so I'm having this new thought with it, and that's why I put the phrase on there, enlightened control freak, that maybe what we've been defining as control freak is a little bit wrong. Maybe control's not the issue. Maybe it's those who try to control everything. That's the issue. It's those who don't do a good job of what Epictetus, I think, talked about, putting everything you face in life into one of 2 categories. This is what I control. This is what I don't control. And I think those control freaks that drive us bananas are the ones who try to control and obsess over controlling things that they really don't control, like other people, what other people think, other people's attitudes, events going on in the world, those types of things. So I'd like to make a little pivot, right, and go, have we thrown the baby out with the bathwater on this one? Is there maybe something like, does control freakism need to go through a little reformation? Is it time for an enlightenment with this idea? Because I think there's something that could be really helpful if we think about it the right way.
Yeah, so I would say this podcast, I'll give you 2 different categories of people that could find this relevant. One, if you are that kind of person, Adam, that you talked about earlier, that sometimes might say, oh yeah, I kind of tend to be a control freak. I get really agitated. I get really worked up over little details. I do find myself obsessing. I have a hard time letting other people own particular parts of the project. I think we've got a couple things to offer that might be helpful for you. And then I would say on the other category would be the kind of person that maybe has thrown the baby out with the bathwater. That's like, well, I don't want to become one of those. And so I'm not, maybe an enlightened one would be a focused one, a self-aware one, a selective control freak, right? So maybe they've gone, well, I haven't even done any of that. I mean, that would be kind of the category that I would put myself in a way. But it is amazingly, to quote Alanis Morissette about being ironic, it is interesting how the person who wants to get everything just right usually is the person that ends up burned out and ineffective. Because when you try to control everything, you end up just getting really frustrated, exhausted, and it's really quite maddening to try to do it. So I like your idea of going, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, that there is a way that we should think about control. And we're going to try to define this. What does it mean to be an enlightened control freak?
Yeah, so I think if we're gonna take the control freakism and put it through some reformation, and there's going to be some enlightenment, I think the enlightened control freak, the people that do it well, right? And there's a lot of people out there that we're going to start to see that do this really, really well. First and foremost, they do not waste any energy on things that they and they alone cannot control. So their ability to sniff out what is in my control and what is out of my control is like amazing. And that's a skill. It is crazy, right? They just have this ability to do that. So they're not going to waste energy on things that are outside of their control. They are crystal clear on things that they do control. And those are the things that they obsess over. So this is like some of the people, I mean, candidly, like somebody that, let's just use a very simple example. Like the person, I used to work with somebody who just since the mid-90s has taken their health and their diet incredibly serious, to the point that at the birthday parties, they were not having cake. If we ever ordered pizza in the office, they weren't eating it. And it was just like, that person was just staying so focused on what they could control for their reasons. And it looked like they were a control freak, but not one time did that person ever give out dieting advice or judge you for what you were eating. They were not worried about you. They were staying focused on them, right? And that was I think that was a good example of somebody who was an enlightened control freak. They were just sitting there going, listen, I'm going to obsess over this because this is what I can control. I'm not telling you to live this way. And this guy never went around talking about the way he ate. He just did it. That was just the way he focused on it. And so I think that we have seen some examples out there of people like that can do this well.
You're going to introduce us to the 1, 2, 3 framework.
Yes.
But before you get into it, where did you get this?
The 1, 2, 3?
Yeah.
Some of this is a conglomeration of things. So, I mean, I have to give credit to a guy named Randy Marshall who taught me a lot of it, or like the basic foundation here of this. And then, yeah, this is just through a lot of trial and error. And you know how it is when you're starting to write. You start writing things out, and you're starting to reflect on your experience. But yeah, I would say I would give most of the credit to Randy Marshall, who helped me with this, who's a guy here in Dallas that helped me with it. So, all right, you want to become
enlightened? I'm going to give you the credit, Adam. I'm going to call it the Tarnow 1, 2, 3 framework.
The Tarnow 1, 2, 3 Enlightened Control Freak method. All right, so it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Just do, and here's it is. There's one question. There's 2 lists, and there's 3 words. This is how we become an enlightened control freak. 1 question, 2 lists. That question produces 2 lists, and then those lists produce 3 words. So the question is this, is what do I want? Not a shocker there. Incredibly simple question to ask, very difficult to answer. But I like it. I think it leads us to the right spot to go, what do you want? So not what does your boss want right now, not what does your spouse want, not what does your kids want, what do you want right now? And I think you've got to start asking that question, because if you don't have clarity around what it is that you want, what your desires are right now, what's stirring inside of you that you're going to be annoyed with, like what expectations do you have out there? If you don't have clarity on that, it's going to be really, really difficult to be able to focus on the things that you can control. And there's a tremendous amount of power that comes when you can actually label and name the things that you're going after and what you want.
When I resigned from my job in 2021, that was the most common question people gave me. It was, well, what do you want? What do you want to do? And it drove me crazy. But until I was able to clarify, get real specific, you're exactly right. You really can't influence others. You can't lead others well, and you certainly can't lead yourself well. So the thing I love about what do you want is it forces you to name your desires. It forces you to state the thing that you're actually after. And you got to get really real on it. It can't be exactly like you said. It can't be what you think other people want you to want. No, what is it that you actually want? That's a great question to start with.
It really is.
The 1, 2,
It
3
is.
framework.
Yeah. And that's why this is a framework, right? Because everybody's going to have different answers there with this. So this is just some things that I see enlightened control freaks do. They ask themselves that question. So now you ask yourself that question. So that's the 1 question. Now here we're at the 2. This is going to produce 2 lists, okay? So you do yourself no favors lying to yourself when you answer that first question. Just be as honest and as brutal as you possibly can. These are things to write down in a journal, type out in notes, again, record voice memos, whatever way you want to do it. But you do yourself no favors unless you just get a total mind dump out there of what it is that you want. Write it all down. Whatever's in your heart, just write it down. It doesn't mean you're going to act on all of it, but you got to get it all out there because you got to take the answers to that question and produce 2 lists. Column 1 is going to be your desires. Desires are things that you want, which you and you alone do not control. The other list is going to be goals. These are things that you want. So you notice they both start with the same. These are things you want, which you and you alone control. So as you're answering yourself the question or asking yourself the question, what do I want? You're putting things in 2 lists. Well, I want a better relationship with my boss. Well, that's a desire because you and you alone don't control that. I want to get promoted. Well, that's a desire because you and you alone don't control that. I want to develop. Well, okay, you and you alone can control that. Go listen to our last episode on all development is self-development. There's some things you can put over there on that list. That's a goals, all right? You and you alone are under control of that one. I want a shorter commute to the office. All right, well, I don't know. That we got to talk about that. Is that something under your control or is that not something under your control? But it all starts with that. What do I want? And then you got to put things into those 2 lists, things that I and I alone control and things that I and I alone do not control.
And then the next category is the category of goals, things that you want and fully own. The thing that's great about that, Adam, is you start naming things like, well, the amount of energy I put into this, I own that. The amount that I spend preparing for this, how many sales calls I actually make, the attitude I show up with. It reminds me of the 4 disciplines of execution when that was where I first learned about lead and lag measurements. Your desires are lag measurements, right? These are things that, yes, if you do the lead ones, you think that you have a better chance of getting what it is that you want. So you do have an opportunity to influence it, but where you create that oasis of excellence is with your goals, right? With things that you do want and things that you fully own. So I love the start with the what do you want question. Number 2, develop these 2 lists. Here's my desires. Here are my desires, and here are my goals. Drawing that line between them is extremely liberating.
It really is. And Clay, what you said there, real quick, before we get to the 3 words in the last one, this is what takes you from an amateur to a professional: is the ability to do what you just did, which is just because I have things on my list that are desires, things that I and I alone do not control, does not mean you just write them down and leave them there. A lot of times, those desires, you're going to start to understand, those are results. Those are end results that you want. The real professionals in this world and the enlightened control freaks, you know what they do? They will learn, they know how to extract controllable goals from their desires. So they will sit there and go, that relationship with my boss, I want to improve that. I want a promotion. All right, I don't control that. That decision's made in a room that I'm not in. But what do I control? And they hang out asking themselves that question. And I'm telling you, as I've been practicing this over the last few years, the longer you hang out with a desire, the longer the list of controllable goals come out of it. And you get those lead measures, you start to go, these are inputs. Whenever I share this idea with salespeople, they totally get it. Like salespeople get it because they don't control customers.
Right. They're like,
but they control phone calls. That's right. They control phone calls sent.
People.
Yep. They control the emails. They control how they're going to follow up with people. There's a ton that they control. And they know how to extract a goal from their desire. So then the 3 words. So what do I want? Put your 2 lists together, goals, desires, and then the 3 words are this. It's super simple. Control the controllables. That's it. Control the controllables. Is just stay like, that's where we become a freak. Is I'm not going to obsess over what my boss is or is not doing or what the senior leadership team is or is not doing. I'm going to obsess and be totally freakish about the things that are on my to-do list that I can control that will hopefully influence things. And I'm telling you, like, not only does this typically lead to results that you want, not only is this the path to get a lot of things on those desires, this is the way to sleep well at night, is to rest well at night just going, I did everything in my control that I could do. And so the rest of it is out of my control. I just need to I just need to let it go because I don't control the way that they're going to freak out about that or the way that they're going to respond to that. So I don't need to freak out about it. So I can rest well at night going, no, I made my list. I stayed focused on my list. I controlled the controllables. The results are just going to be what the results are.
The 1, 2, 3 framework on becoming an enlightened control freak. 1 question, what do you want? 2 lists, desires and goals. 3 words, control the controllable. Adam, I'm with you. If you did this, you would feel better about yourself. It's
totally
more fulfilling, right? Because that was actually that was a big moment in my life when I realized I needed to resign from the job that I was in. Was I started recognizing in myself that I was trying to control. I was getting more and more frustrated over things that I had no control over.
That's
and
right.
I wonder if I'd have had the 1, 2, 3 framework, how that might have looked different that season of my life. But I like this framework a lot. I would encourage people, try to figure out how to apply it. Figure out a way to apply it in the next week, and give yourself a deadline, and then give us some feedback on what you found when you did.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. There it is. Just reflect on the question, create the 2 lists, and I'll just leave us with this, right? An enlightened control freak, they are not freaking out over outcomes. They are obsessed about the process, just following the things that they can control. And so I think it's a secret. I think there's something good, and it's time for it to go through this enlightenment. So as always, Clay, great to have a conversation with you today. Look forward to next time.
You too.
Well, that's all we got for today's episode of the How to Lead podcast. You can always reach out to us via email. We can be reached at info@howtolead.work. That's info@howtolead.work. Every episode is mixed and edited by the team over at Sound of a Rose. You can learn more about them at soundofarose.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.